Well, look, I know most of you guys are still suffering from like turkey coma, so I'm going to keep it short and easy today. We're going to talk about something we don't normally talk about here at the Church on 68, and that's placement. Okay, the laughter was because that was sarcasm. I like to think of sarcasm as one of my spiritual gifts. It's how I deal with stress a lot, and you guys are scary, man. I mean, just there's not as many of you here as there normally are, but I mean, you guys are scary. You know, the number one fear that people have is speaking publicly. Beats out death. Death is number two. They're more afraid of being up here in front of you guys than they are of dying. And number three would be dying while speaking publicly. So you guys are scary today, but we're going to talk a little bit about placement, and I want to dig a little deeper today than I think we normally do when we talk about this. I think that all of us would agree with the concept of placement, especially here at 68. We've been kind of steeped in the concept of placement, and I think we would agree to a point, but I don't think we take it far enough. And so I want to talk a little bit about placement today. Now, I struggled with this message because after listening to Fletch, how many were here for the anniversary? Man, I mean, I'm listening to Fletch and I'm thinking, man, there is such deep spiritual truth that this guy is laying out. And this message is so practical. It's like, God, shouldn't I talk about something a little more spiritual? And so God, since God speaks my language, God said, what? What I gave you wasn't spiritual enough? So, God, that wasn't what I said. Yeah, it kind of was what you said. But so God speaks sarcastically to me as well. But Pastor has spoken the last couple of weeks about shifting from a ministry mindset to a kingdom mindset, and so this is kind of an extension of that. It really does go along with it. He also said just last week, if it's scriptural, it's spiritual. So what I'm trying to say is don't let the practicality of what I'm talking about today overshadow the spiritual implications that are buried in there. There are spiritual implications to this very practical message. So as we talk about placement today, this topic is not limited to those of you who attend 68 or those of you who have been here for a while and you understand it. If that's you, you have my permission to go ahead and start planning what you're going to do with all those leftovers today for dinner, okay? You can take but just a minute because I'm going to come right back. But I want to kind of level the playing field. So for those of you who may not understand what I mean when I say placement, I just want to level the playing field and kind of explain what I'm talking about. When I talk about placement, I'm saying that we believe if we will allow God to, He will actually place us in a local church. So what we tend to do is we tend to shop, we tend to search for a local church that has what we think we need. We believe instead of searching for a church that has what we need, we believe that God will place us in a church where we are needed. So rather than put the focus on us and look for a church that has what we need, kingdom mindset says, God, put me in a church where what I have is needed. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about placement, and it is scriptural. If you can bring up 1 Corinthians 12 through 18. This is Paul writing to the church in Corinth, and he says, the human body has many parts. Everybody agree with me so far? Human body has many parts, but the many parts make up one whole body. So it is with the body of Christ. So he's taking our human body and he is comparing that to the body of Christ, the church, big C. Some of us are Jews, some are Gentiles, some are slaves, and some are free, but we have all been baptized into one body by one Spirit, and we all share the same Spirit. Yes, the body has many different parts, not just one part. If the foot says, I'm not a part of the body because I'm not a hand, does that make it any less a part of the body? The obvious answer is no. And if the ear says, I am not a part of the body because I am not an eye, would that make it any less a part of the body? If the whole body were an eye, how would you hear? Or if your whole body were an ear, how would you smell anything? But our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where He wants it. All of you together, this is where he twists it now. He takes it from our human bodies and talks about the body of Christ. All of you together are Christ's body, and each of you is a part of it. Here are some of the parts God has appointed for the church. First are apostles, second prophets, third are teachers, then those who do miracles, those who have the gift of healing, those who can help others, those who have the gift of leadership, and those who speak in unknown languages. Some of the gifts, not an all-inclusive list. The first thing I want to point out here is our diversity is not found in our skin color. Our diversity is found in our function. Okay, so Paul doesn't, he talks about some are Jews and some are Greeks and some are slaves or some are free. He's not talking about our diversity there. Our diversity comes from the gifts that God has given to the church. So that's the first point. The Apostle Paul is comparing the human body to the body of Christ, and that would be the church, big C, the church, not this church. So that is as far as we tend to take it sometimes. Okay, I've been called here to the church on 68. Ta-da! Here I am. I've been placed. I give, serve, worship, pray, and that's it. I'm here every week. Every time the doors are open, I show up. I've been placed, and I am fulfilling my placement. I think that's how some of us tend to think of placement. So, if you believe that God has placed you here at the church on 68, the next question you should ask God, not me, is why? Why have you put me here? What do you want me to do? What function am I to perform that will benefit this local body of believers? Now, this is different from what most churches teach. Most churches will teach that we come every week to be fed. I was talking with a friend of mine on the phone a few weeks ago and explaining to him that what I really do appreciate about this church is that it's different, not just for difference sake, but it's actually different in a meaningful spiritual way. So I was telling him, I don't come to church to be fed. And as I was continuing, he said, hold on, wait a minute. You don't go to church to be fed? Why go to church? So I had to explain to him then this concept. We go to church to be equipped, not to be fed. Now, we get this concept of feeding by putting together a couple of scriptures. It's not really a biblical concept, even though we pull some scriptures out of context and make it a biblical concept. When Jesus was resurrected and he was talking with Peter, I think it's in the Gospel of John, and he says 3 times, Peter, do you love me? And much has been made of the different uses of the word love there. And each time Peter responds, yes, you know I love you, Jesus says, feed my sheep. That's the first place we get this concept of coming to church to be fed from. The other is the Old Testament word for shepherd is pastor. And so we have kind of taken these two concepts and married them and said, okay, it's the pastor's job, the shepherd's job, to feed the sheep. Now, this makes sense unless you're a shepherd. Because a shepherd knows he doesn't go crawling around in the grass, pulling up handfuls of grass to give to his sheep. Okay? He doesn't really feed the sheep. The word that Jesus uses there for feed is better translated and is translated in some translations as tend or pasture my flock. So lead them to where they can eat. You're not pulling up handfuls of grass and feeding them. Now, a couple of other problems with feeding. Jesus was speaking to Peter. And while Peter did take a prominent leadership role in the early church, Peter was never the pastor of a local congregation. Now, you can say, well, Jesus didn't know that. Jesus was God. He knew that. He was not speaking to Peter as the pastor of a local congregation saying, feed this congregation. The other problem is in the list of gifts in Ephesians, leadership gifts that Christ has given to the church, feeding is not one of the functions that Paul lists and says this is what the leadership is supposed to do. Paul says the leadership's job is to equip the church to do the work. We can look at that. Ephesians 4, 11 and 12, if we got that one there. These are the gifts Christ gave to the church: the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers. Their responsibility is not to feed, is to equip God's people to do His work and build up the church, a body of Christ. So equipping is not the same as feeding. So, what is our responsibility in placement? What are we supposed to do? Well, we've got to determine why God chose to place us here where He did. Now, Richard was asking for testimonies in men's prayer Tuesday morning, and I could have given this, but then it would have been my message, and so I wanted to hold off for a little bit, and besides, it's a little long. When I was looking for a church, actually, I wasn't looking for a church. I had pretty much determined I was not going to church anymore. I was done with church. Forget church. God, I love you. Your people, not so much. I was done with church. I wasn't going anywhere. So I came here to talk to Pastor about a book I had written. I had asked him to endorse it. And so I came here to discuss that. And it was odd, when I walked in the front door, I heard God say, "This is where I want you." Very clearly, I know. And that was my reaction. It's like, "Oh, God, hold on, you got the wrong guy. Remember, I'm not going to church. This is me you're talking to. This is, you know." But God said, "This is your home," basically. It felt very comfortable. I felt peaceful about it. Still couldn't understand why. So I'm asking God, why do you want me here? Those of you who know me, man, I'm a number cruncher. I'm a data guy. I'm a teacher. This church doesn't have classes for me to teach. There's not much for me to measure here to fix. So it's like, God, why do you want me here? I mean, what is your purpose for putting me here? And it soon became obvious to me why I was supposed to be here. You guys needed me. I mean, I'm a fixer, okay? And you guys needed fixing. I mean, man, you didn't have small groups. You didn't have a youth group. Your children met once a month. You guys were never going to grow without my help. And every church wants to grow. So that was obviously why God had placed me here, because I was supposed to change the church on 68. Now, the problem with that is we've been here a little over 6 years now, and you guys haven't changed very much. But I have. And that's the point. God didn't place me here to change you. He placed me here for you to change me. Now, I didn't get that. That was a problem with my thinking. My placement here was on purpose. I'm still the same. I'm still a fixer. I'm a number cruncher. I love data. I like learning just for the sake of learning. If I could afford to be a full-time student, that's probably what I would do. I like to learn things, just to know things. Now, that still doesn't necessarily fit in with the mindset of the church. Here's what I've discovered. Here's why I've been placed here. I've been placed here to help rebuild, repair, revive, and restore the desolation of many generations caused by the spiritual strongholds over this local region. The context of my placement is found in the mission of this local body. That's also a shift from a ministry mindset to a kingdom mindset, because it's not about what I can do for you. It's about what I can do for the kingdom in the context of where God has placed me. Do I even have a purpose then? What's my purpose here? I mean, I can stop with, I'm here. All right, God, you placed me here. Here I am. This is it. But I have a purpose. There's a reason why I'm here. You have a purpose. There's a reason God has placed you here. I'm going to illustrate this by taking a look at a little video I want us to watch together. And this is going to illustrate my point of placement. Now, of course, every illustration will break down at some point, but I think this one does a good job of illustrating where we're placed or why we're placed. If you could pull that video up for me and then pause it right there for a second. Does anybody know what this is? Okay. These pieces represent us. And this is how it would be if each of us said, okay, I'm here. This is where I am. God has placed me here on this table, and I'm here. Does anybody know how each of these things fit together? Can anybody put this together? I'm glad we don't have a watchmaker in the house, because that might have just, done my whole message in. So you will also notice some of these pieces look very similar. They might look like they're interchangeable. You can see a hole there in that casing where maybe a couple of these pieces might fit. You will also notice there are no instructions there. So you and I may not know where these pieces fit, but somebody does. And that's also kind of the point of placement is I may not necessarily know how I fit or where I fit, but God does. He knows where to put me. All right, let's keep that video going. Pick one of those pieces to represent you. I did have a pause built in here, but I didn't think it was long enough, so I asked them to pause it for me. Maybe it was long enough. There we go. All right. So you can see that some of these pieces are meant to interact with other pieces. You can see how that one will fit there. Meant to interact with another piece. Look at that tiny little piece there. Some pieces are just meant to hold other pieces in place. That's their sole purpose, just to hold other pieces in place. It's one that might be interchangeable. Boy, if you put that one in upside down, that just wouldn't work, would it? So all these pieces, look at that, how they fit right with each other. There's another one just meant to hold something in place. All right, we're getting there. Look at how small some of these pieces are. Tiny, tiny pieces. But they have a function, even as small as they are. Some of these pieces are so small that the watchmaker here has to wear a magnifying glass to see them. Look, some of these pieces need to be adjusted to snap into place. They don't just fit where they go. They need some adjustment. Sometimes we need some adjustment to snap into our place. All that held together. Look at that. Got to snap that piece in there. Wasn't quite there. Now he's wearing a magnifying glass. These pieces are so small that he needs a magnifying glass to figure out where they go. Now we're getting to some of the pieces that are more easily recognizable. Believe it or not, I did shorten this video. See how that's got a snap in there. It doesn't just, he's got to figure out where it goes. Look, now as we get to the ending pieces here. Testing, does it work? That screw turns backwards. Who would have figured that out? I'd have still been screwing it. It wouldn't have worked. Now see, this piece, some of you may have a calling or a gift that originates or operates outside the church. Okay, it's not part of the whole there. It might operate outside of the local body. That's where it's put together. That's where it's assembled. But these gifts find their context in the local body. So until it's made a part of the whole, it doesn't work. And there we have a functioning watch. Look at those small, tiny pieces. Everybody knows what that piece does? Ta-da. All right. You will notice that each piece of that watch was specifically designed to fit in one spot. Not one of those pieces was decorative. They all had a function. And if even the smallest part of that watch was not functioning, the entire watch doesn't function the way it was intended to function. Now that's the way it is here. And that's the spiritual implication. Each of you, just like each of the pieces of that watch, has a function. It's not decorative. You're not the band. Your function is not to warm up a seat. God didn't place you here just so you would have a place to go to church on Sundays, to fulfill your Christian obligation, your Christian duty. God placed you here with a purpose, with a function. Just like the watch, you are designed for a specific function. You're not interchangeable with another piece, and your function is absolutely vital to the function of this local body. Our mission as a local body is to rebuild, repair, revive, and restore the desolation of many generations caused by the spiritual strongholds over this region. We can't do that unless each of you functions the way you were designed and built to function. None of these pieces just filled a slot. Well, here's a hole. This piece will fit in that hole. Let me just plop this gear in that hole. It's not how it works. So I'm not talking about you just filling a slot. And this message isn't here because we need workers. If that's what you're hearing, it's not what this is about. I'm not talking about just filling a slot that needs filled. Well, some of you, that may work. You may have a slot that you can fill and it fits right in with your function, your purpose. Others, maybe not. Maybe your purpose isn't as easily recognizable. If you don't know what your function is or your purpose, then you may need to try filling a slot. See if it works. Okay, we have a no obligation policy. You know what? If you try it and it doesn't work and it's not you, we'll probably know that before you do. But let us know. You know what? I thought this might have been me. It's not. No problem. Let's find what's you. Let's find your purpose. I think of my mom. She just turned 88 this week. Okay, now, Mom would have trouble filling a slot here. She's a pretty friendly person, but she couldn't stand long enough out there at the front doors to greet people. She probably couldn't keep up with the kids in the classrooms, so those slots are out for her. She doesn't like coffee, so I'm not sure the cafe would be good for her either. But one thing my mom can do is pray. And that's a slot. That's a function. That's a purpose. That's something where she can fit, even in her 80s, doesn't necessarily fit into a slot, and that's okay. The context of her placement is the context of the local body where she's placed. You were designed to do something. Now, some of you, your function is to lift your voice in worship. That's your function. You're supposed to encourage those around you to sing. For some of you, that encouragement may come from trying to sing louder to drown out the noise you're making. Still a function. When I was growing up in church, when I was young, we had a young man who came to church named Harrison. And this was one of those small churches, had the board up front that, our attendance last week was 23 and our offering was $6.75. Here are the hymn numbers we're going to sing this week. I mean, anybody else go to a little church like that? I mean, you can relate. Okay, small church. It was nowhere near, it wasn't even as big as the center section here. Okay, small church. Now, anyone ever heard the mating call of a moose? Imagine that moose is wounded and has a microphone. Now, it sounds mean. I don't intend it to be mean, but that's pretty much what Harrison sounded like when he sang. And the dude sang loud. You could hear him down the street. But Harrison didn't let his lack of vocal abilities stop him from making a joyful noise. And it was a noise, okay? But man, everybody knew when Harrison sang. Everybody could hear Harrison. It's okay. I have not heard a single Harrison in here. So it's okay. For some of you, your purpose is to lift your voice in worship, is to encourage others. Some of you don't know what you're supposed to do. And what you're supposed to do in that case is ask God. God, what am I supposed to do? We're taught to hear God's voice. Now I want to look at Romans 12. Commander, you can come on up. I'm wrapping it up here. Romans 12, 6 through 8 says, in His grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So, if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. How simple is that? If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. Now, notice that these gifts are not necessarily the gifts that we think of when we think of gifts. It's not the preaching and teaching and up front, not being on the praise team or leading a small group. Man, who would know if you have the gift of encouragement, the gift of kindness? That comes out sometime. Now here's the thing. I am not one who has the gift of encouragement. But I need that gift of encouragement. If I don't have it, where do I get encouraged? From you guys. Some of you have the gift of encouragement and you're sitting on that gift. You're not being encouraging. Some of you have the gift of kindness. Maybe not an evident gift. I need that gift. We need that gift of kindness in order to function efficiently. Some of you have the gift of giving, and you're not the upfront givers that everybody knows about. You're the ones who prefer to be in the background and give and not have anybody know. Still a gift of giving, and we need those gifts. We need your gift. So what Paul is really saying here in Romans is, if you have a gift, just use it. In the words of Nike, just do it. The point is, you have a gift, you have a purpose, you have a function. There's something you are supposed to be doing. What Paul says is, do it. Use that gift for our benefit, because if you don't use your gift, We can't be that icebreaker ship and break up spiritual strongholds so that other ministries in this region can do what they're supposed to do. We have to each fulfill our function like the watch so that we fit in the place that we were, not just where we fit, but fit in the place where we were designed to fit. You were designed differently than everyone else in the building here. It's okay. It's okay. You have a designed purpose, though, and a function. Fulfill that purpose and that function. Oh, I thought I had more, but that's really it. Fulfill the purpose that you were designed to fill. Do what you were designed to do. And what you were designed to do fits in the context of what we are designed to do. So fulfill your function.